And I think it will be, how do you think the sequel trilogy will be viewed with more time? Do you think there will be a shift in public perception like the prequels? Or do you think the reevaluation was an exception rather than the norm? So the thing with the sequels that's weird is social media, which, yes, we had chat boards and stuff during the prequels, but there was also this kind of wave of nostalgia that took over that made for the reevaluation. Again, there are plenty of people out there who hate the prequels still. There are. Just those people's voice aren't the main voices anymore. Our generation and the like generation within 5 to 10 years of us is the dominant voice in kind of pop culture and YouTube and that type of space right now. So we've kind of created this maybe false perception that's super beloved now. I do think general audience, because of our generation's love and passion for the prequels, I do think a lot more general audiences who just were going along with the groupthink of a lot of people and said they hated them have given them a reevaluation. I do think that our generation being so obsessed with them has shown them to people who wouldn't normally watch Star Wars, and they've actually fallen in love with it due to the kind of 2000s sensibilities of some of them. But there are older generations who still absolutely hate the prequels. And I think there's still going to be that for the sequels. Now, the weird thing, like I mentioned with social media with the sequels, is how much of the generation that was supposed to grow up loving the sequels is influenced by the constant negativity that they are experiencing on social media. Because I always felt like originally when the sequels were coming out, oh, they'll have their day. Eventually, there will be those people who are prominent in the conversation who were 6 years old when The Force Awakens came out, and now will have their time to talk about how great and how much they love the sequels. And I'm sure there will still be that conversation. It will get better, but I don't know if it will have a full turnaround like the prequels, because I do think there's just a general fact around the younger generation nowadays being so influenced by what people like us say on YouTube that they might have enjoyed the movie when they watched it the first time, but they're 8 years old watching a YouTuber say that sucks, so then now they hate it. And I don't know how much of that will end up carrying in throughout their lives, or whether they will reevaluate from when they were a child, because were they ever allowed to have that nostalgia feeling around something when they were told they weren't supposed to like it immediately? Like when we were younger, I genuinely didn't know people hated the prequels until I was like 13 years old because we didn't have social media, and I wasn't on message boards when I was 7, so I didn't know people didn't like these movies, and I didn't talk to old school Star Wars fans. I just consumed them, right? And all my friends liked them and I liked them. And then I loved the Clone Wars as a kid. Like all those things just reinforced my love for it. I think the fact that Disney kind of went away from the sequels a little bit, so there hasn't been that reinforcement of the property itself, the fact that social media and influencers and people, a lot of them have conditioned younger generations to say, no, this sucks, rather than say, hey, you enjoy it if you like. I don't know if the sequels will ever really get that full turnaround. And I think the third reason why is because of how much content we get nowadays for Star Wars versus back then. It was like, you don't like the prequels, then that was the only Star Wars content coming out. So if you were a kid and you were watching it like us, we went from the prequels to Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars to the 3D animated Clone Wars. All of it was in the same era. Like everything Star Wars you could watch that was new was all in the same era, versus now you've got stuff that takes place all around the Star Wars world. You have so much more than we got when we were kids that you can kind of pick and choose what you like most. And so I think there's that inevitability around like pulling people away from the sequel era into other eras that might be more inundated with classic Star Wars feel and vibes, because there's content surrounding that, and because Disney's kind of abandoned the sequels as a main story. There are going to be generations that grow up with Mandalorian, and then Mandalorian's more closely aligned to the original trilogy and prequel trilogy than it is to the sequels. So there's all of that too. So it'll be a really interesting thing to track. I think the sequel perception will get better, but I don't know if it will have the full bounce back like the prequels have had, just purely because of all those other factors.
Yeah, I agree basically with everything that you said here, Liam. I had message boards and stuff around, like what was it called? What was that website? It was a place, just Jedi forums or whatever it's called. It was a hate board at some point. People were just like how modern social media, they're just like hated the movies, right? And yeah, a lot of it was fair criticism, right? Like that was a thing. Even if you look at like the old message boards for like Lord of the Rings, they hated the changes that were being made at first, but it wasn't flooded into your face from day one, right? Like kids didn't have phones, have thousands of hours of footage within 1 second of you loading up the phone, right? Like stuff like that just wasn't a thing for us. So that makes it harder for sure. It's harder to get people's interest peaked in something a lot more now these days, because there's less time for things to sit and settle, right? A lot of movies nowadays can get pulled early, especially in a post-COVID world. So I don't really expect that to be an issue with Star Wars, because it's such an established and older franchise. But yeah, it's harder. And there's so much more visual media under Disney that is on our screens, on our TV screens and our movie screens, that you're jumping around so much more often versus like what Liam said. Okay, you watch episode 1, you've played the games around it like Racer and, Starfighter. Okay, great. You're done with
Lego
that.
Star Wars.
Lego Star Wars, bam, here we go. Okay, episode 2. Okay, great. Tartakovsky's Clone Wars was a bridge, literally built as a bridge into episode 3, right? And then, oh wait, Clone Wars kind of destroyed a lot of like the 2003 multimedia project for a lot of people with some of its inconsistencies. But hey, it was George Lucas making it with Filoni, so people watched that for 5 seasons and 6th on Netflix and 7th eventually when it kind of gets this little mini reboot here on Disney Plus. So many video games in that era, so many books. The only things that was outside of the era was New Jedi Order and everything after that, because it had already started at the same exact time as the prequels had started coming out. Now we have the High Republic happening. We have an Acolyte kind of offshoot happen there, but then we also have Dawn of the Jedi being possibly rumored. Then we have this whole Mandoverse that exploded on accident. The Mandalorian was never meant to be this big. It was meant to be just like a cool little Western gunslinger, right? And then just like, oh snap, this guy's so big, and we want to like immediately undo a lot of the negativity of the sequels. So why wouldn't you? That's a smart business decision. Now they're in the conundrum of like, oh, streaming didn't survive for more than 5 years. Well, we don't want to let go of their best property since the sequel, so now we have to deal with that. So yeah, kids will have that struggle of like, which did you grow up on? Did you grow up on the sequels, or did you really grow up on everything that was original trilogy, prequel adjacent with Mandalorian? And do you have issues with that now too because of how it stumbled halfway through? Now the storyline feels like it's getting longer, much longer, to get to the point of that New Republic film that Filoni was announced for. So I think that's for the best, but there's that challenge. Like now you can't just abandon that, right? Luckily, we are seeing some sequel revivalism. I think one crucial thing that people are always underplaying about Star Wars is that once they see something they don't like, then they will just be like, wow, we're too harsh on this thing. I'm seeing so many people on like Twitter say like, wow, all the sauce of the sequels. Wow, they actually trusted their original characters instead of just having legacy characters stick around forever and deep fakes and all. Yeah, that's already happening. Not to the same degree as when it was just the Skywalker saga, but it's happening. Now we have like Path of the Lightsaber, which is gonna be set between episode 8 and 9 as a new original manga, the first since Edge of Balance. We're getting Legacy of Vader, which has been well received. We're getting books like Shadow of the Sith starting to happen. We're getting our first book post episode 9 with The Last Order with Finn and Janna, right? Like a lot of this stuff is starting, right? And now hopefully all that stuff building into Starfighter, building into an era of like just, hey, you don't have to love it, but there's just so much stuff happening in this era now that you can kind of pick and choose different mediums to interact with this. Maybe that'll build a full era that people can be like, okay, I don't love necessarily the start of it, but now it's opened up a huge world that I love a lot of these characters. And when these characters that were the original starters kind of showed up again, I saw how much they grew. I saw some really cool storylines come out of that. I don't think anybody looks at a Kip Duron and Jedi Knight Academy and doesn't see and like project how interesting of an arc he has, despite some of the flaws that he has in New Jedi Order being a horrible, miserable Jedi to deal with. But what he grows through that experiences and grows into Legacy of the Force and everything, like you're like, wow, that's such an interesting look at redeeming a character without just like letting them like just like Vader per se, or like Kylo when he turns back into Ben, where they just die and like that's it. Kip is such an interesting character, but you don't expect that for a kid who just destroyed entire star systems because he was so revenge filled and maybe not pushed and pulled by Exar Kun spirit, right? Same thing can happen here with the sequels. You don't have to love where they were at, but they can kind of grow and blend, and you'd be like, oh, I don't love them when they're 20, but maybe when they're 35, I really loved what they ended up, right? People didn't love Ahsoka when she first appeared. Now, I think by the time we got to Rebel Season 2, she was so beloved. Now she's kind of like, you don't love how she's translating fully to live action, but she is like still genuinely super beloved. Maybe not 95% loving her. Maybe it's kind of slipped more to 80%, but you can do that with these characters. As long as the story is well thought, well executed, things can always improve with Star Wars. So cultural dying significance, that's the thing with every IP right now. That's my biggest argument there. But kids also just have the difficulty of choosing which Star Wars now. And the best thing to do is wrap up Mandoverse as well as you can through movies, build out a sequel, post-sequel era properly with old multimedia, create books and stories for the original trilogy characters and stuff like that actually bridges those 30 years. And then, we'll be where we are probably at the start of the Del Rey era after Bantam was very up and down for the 90s Star Wars.
Hello there, Star Wars Lads fans. Thank you so much for watching this video. This was actually a clip from one of our live streams and Q&As. So if you'd like to join us every single Tuesday around 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Make sure you join us. It'll allow you to ask a question that might be turned into a video. Hopefully you join us. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below all of your thoughts on this clip. Thanks for watching, and we will see you all next time.